Hey everyone, Fan here, and I think it's time to discuss something important about Mega Man Maker. With version 1.10 released, the developers have shown us numerous things that could potentially happen. With the diverse amount of content from the classic games and a small inclusion of Mega Man X content, I think it's safe to say that almost anything is possible now. So let's discuss the future of Mega Man Maker. What's left to do? What's the next step? Well, here's what I think might happen. Let's start with what I think is to be the most obvious thing, wrapping up the classic series. If you take a closer look, it becomes obvious that there are still some things that need to be added. The lack of Wily Wars content is a perfect example of this. Think about it. The only representation here is music and gimmick skins. That's it! It feels incomplete compared to a game like Mega Man 9, where there's a bunch of stuff added. Thankfully, there is a solution. A whole new update dedicated to this game would be a great way to give some spotlight. New tiles, backgrounds, and bosses would be amazing to see. This game even has a lot of
decoration
to use here. Additionally, some new color variants for enemies and gimmicks would add a pinch of detail to those hazards. Speaking of incomplete, there are other areas in games that need some attention, mainly the amount of enemies, gimmicks, and bosses in certain games. Now, that's not to dismiss the fact that some of these games don't have a lot of, let's say, gimmicks. Mega Man 2 has only around 10 of them, and Maker added 4, not counting the added beams and water drop. And then we have a game like Mega Man 11. Sure, Maker has most of its gimmicks, but there's still a third of them left! The Fortress bosses are the most impacted by this. Remember, these were introduced back in 1.8, and 2 updates later, we only have 8 full-on Fortress bosses. Personally, there's gotta be way more fights in the future, and more than just one per game. There's also extra things that I feel like need to be added. For years, we've been waiting for W-tanks, colored boss stars, and much more. Adding small things like these would greatly improve level making. My friend even thought of a couple ideas for the game too. A collectible energy balancer would add some value of exploration to these stages. More infinite weapons would add some unique stage ideas like weapon trials. Different shard shots would add some variety to Mega Man, like the Mega Arm, Arrow Shot, and Laser Shot. Same thing with Proto Man and his charge shot from 7. Alright, let's switch gears. There are some potential games that could get their own updates into Maker, starting with the game that only 1% of the population loves, Mega Man and Base 2. Okay, jokes aside, the things that this game contains would suit for a pretty good update. The amount of unique enemies and gimmicks would provide great ideas for stages and interactions with other hazards. Same thing for bosses. The backgrounds and tiles would be beautiful in an 8-bit style. The only issue I'd see here is the amount of decorations present. From what I can see, there's barely any to begin with. Another game, or should I say games, that would fit the bill are the DOS games. This one is definitely a weird addition, but hear me out. Despite the amount of effort needed to respray everything that they wanted to add, it would provide a pretty interesting update. The very whack enemies from both games can enhance numerous level themes, and can even add a pinch of realism into these levels, the ants from Dynaman being a perfect example. As for bosses, there really isn't a need for a whole bunch of them. Honestly, 2 from DOS 1, 1 from DOS 3, and Croak would be just fine. Last but not least, we have the arcade games. Mega Man the Power Battle / Fighters has a lot to offer, like the numerous tiles, backgrounds, and songs. It also has new abilities like the Mega Upper, Crescent Kick, and much more. These games' bosses also have new patterns compared to their original source, which would be a really cool addition to see. There's also different weapons too, like the Super Arm making you shoot a whole ass rock, or the completely new Feral Wave. There's also this gimmick that is only used in Crash Ban's fight. Here's the best part. This game has a playable character, Duo. With his dual fist and giant knuckle, he can shred through enemies like butter. Unlike Mega Man or Proto Man, Duo can't really slide, but rather bash, which would be a first for Maker. Sadly, these 4 entries are, from what I know, the only official games they have left to cover. Normally this means that the amount of things to do for an update are very limited, but that's not the case at all. There are still numerous options out there, and one of them involves a certain list. Call me crazy, but I believe the deconfirmed list can play a part into Maker's future, and I have proof. For those of you who have been watching for a while, you may recognize this video. If you haven't, go watch it, but in short, my friend and I explore a theory involving the addition of reverse gravity, and why it could be a possibility. If we look at the most recent version, 1.10, we can see some form of this via Gravity Man's plushie. Now, if we look a bit further, specifically in the Music tab, we can see music from Mega Man X, Zero, and ZX. Now isn't that weird? Both of these things are on the deconfirmed list, and for the latter, the devs went out of their way to make music for different series. What's more is that there is this. The development team reserves the right to add, remove, and fix content as needed. Where am I getting with this? Well, what I'm trying to say is that there's a possibility that more things from this list might arrive in future updates, like Proto Man and Bass being mid-bosses, and more X content, which we'll be talking more about soon. There's also potential adapters for Proto Man, Bass, and Roll. We got Rush Marine and Rush Bike versions of each character, so it's not out of the question. I don't think they're gonna add anything too wild, but it's still intriguing to think about what could become reality. There's also the fact that the things that broke the list can go further. The aforementioned reverse gravity may be fully implemented. If Gravity Man's plushie can make himself and other plushies flip, maybe something else, like a gimmick that can do the same thing to playables and enemies can work. And the addition of Mega Man X, Zero, and ZX music may lead up to more series getting some songs like Legends or even Battle Network. You know, speaking of Mega Man X, I have a suspicion about something. To put it bluntly, I think Mega Man X could have some involvement in Maker. Yes, I know, that's another crazy statement to say, but I believe there's a reason for randomly putting X music in a game about the classic series. That reason being to bring the X series into the picture. There's a lot of ways this could happen, but all of these would be very difficult to implement, meaning that it would take a while to add. First, they could dedicate a style to the X series, kind of like Mario Maker 2 and how you can choose what game to make your foundation. It would be sick to see X, Zero, Axel, and Vile as playable characters, and the amount of abilities these guys would have is insane! X with his armor parts, Zero with both his Buster and Saber, Axel with his hover, and Vile with his ride armors. That's a lot already! The amount of enemies and gimmicks the X series has is a lot, which leaves the devs many to select from. If very ambitious, a whole new game could even be dedicated to this series. Mega Man X Maker. Pretty good name if I say so myself. Let's take a pause for a second. It's important to know that not everything comes out on the first update, and it's no exception here. Things need to be taken slowly, which in this case means that only a few games would be represented. Obviously, this would be the SNES games since they started the series. There's also the time and dedication to code in these playables, hazards, and extra content that involves adding new things in. Additionally, this would most likely cause numerous engine quirks, patches, and depending on how development leads, poor quality. To prevent these problems, a mix between classic and X content could be a step forward. It wouldn't have as much stuff as I said with the style idea, but it would still be cool to see nonetheless. Seeing a couple playables with some of their abilities, as well as some hazards and bosses in a new X category would work perfectly for a grand update. Like I said before, this would take a lot of time and effort, but thankfully it won't take as much time as it would to make a new X style, so this is a reasonable implementation of the X series. It's very important to note that not every update will be, "We have this in the editor now." Other things like the online menu deserve the spotlight too. I do believe that these features will get some improvements later on, specifically the online server and the tutorial. Let's start with the latter. Let's face it, the tutorial has been outdated for several years now. And it's a shame, because it's supposed to teach you how everything in the editor works. Don't get me wrong, it's nothing terrible. It does its job, but as recent updates released came additional tools to the editor. This leads to my main issue. The tutorial was never improved to cover these tools. Now you may think that adding a whole section dedicated to these tools would be a solution, but I personally don't. It would just make the tutorial longer than necessary. This is what I would suggest. When you go into extras, then select tutorial, instead of being put right into the action, you can select different guides revolving around different parts of the editor, like the controls, builder tabs, layering, and more. I suggest this for a couple reasons. First, it allows the charm of the guide to stay. I really liked the idea of Wily and Light showing you the ropes, and if that was gone, the tutorial would be extremely dull. Second, it allows players to go back to a guide if they forgot something. I don't know about you, but I forget a lot of useful stuff in the editor, and it's really unfortunate not to go back to see how you can do it again. Additionally, it feels like a one-and-done situation, which in my eyes is not that great. Rehauling the tutorial to be something like this would not only fix these problems, but it would be beneficial to newcomers and maybe even experts. Alright, let's switch modes, specifically online, where people can play your levels. The things featured here are already great. An option to upvote or downvote levels is great for feedback. Reporting levels is good for getting the nasty stuff out of the way, and the countless ways to search for levels is amazing! Even though online is great, I do think there are two main things that can be added in the future. First, a comment section, where you can give feedback about others' levels. I know Webmecha contains this, but I barely see people use it, so much so that I question myself, why is it here? If this was added in-game, I would see it get a lot more uses. Second, level descriptions. This is also on Webmecha, but like comments, they get little to no use. The ability to get some intel on a user's stage is great before embracing it. Now, would these two things take a while? Yes, absolutely. But, if implemented, it would significantly enhance online mode for the better, and would be an amazing way to have builders interact with each other, whether by comment or a simple description. There is one thing that will most likely become reality. On September 23rd, a poll was posted with a selection of options people chose for version 1.11. The winner was a nuclear dev team choice, meaning that the devs chose what to add from any classic-themed Mega Man games. Not only does this include official games, but also fan-made content. If this is legitimate, this might mark the first time Mega Man Maker has ever crossed over with other fan games. The question is, what fan games would fit the bill? Well, obviously, traditional platformers like Mega Man Unlimited would be something that they will be aiming for, but I feel like they must have some reputation to even get a chance. There are 3 games that I think fit this perfectly. Starting with our example. Unlimited has a crap ton of content to offer, like the various amounts of enemies, bosses, and graphics. The music has numerous vibes to them which can complement different level themes, and the weapons are completely unique to your average set, meaning that it allows users to experiment a lot more. This might seem like a stretch, but Z Prototype would be an interesting playable for Maker. His whole gimmick involving life leeching is pretty cool, and like Zero from the X series, he learns techniques instead of gaining weapons. Another great example is Mega Man Rock Force. Like Unlimited, this game features great enemies, gimmicks, and graphics, but unlike the previous example, this one takes on a different artistic approach. Rock Force takes on the look of a more classic NES style rather than being more detailed like Unlimited. The bosses have very unique patterns which can add a lot when customizing an arena. For example, Charade Man uses balls to attack, and certain ones have Charade clones. Finally, there's Roko-chan. The main thing I see in this game is Roko herself. She has some very unique things regarding gameplay. For one, she has a higher jump with around 4 tiles in height. She can also dash like Base, and can also dash jump. In exchange, she can't charge or buster. The art style is very interesting and can provide some interesting graphics. The enemies and gimmicks are also very intriguing too. They can provide new opportunities for stage design and an enhanced fun factor with Roko too. There are other games that can work too, but I found these 3 entries to be perfect for a crossover with Maker. And while they are the most obvious picks, it goes without saying the amount of possibilities 1 or even 2 major updates can have for these titles. This concludes my thoughts on the future of Mega Man Maker. There are many paths to take, but I found these 5 to be the more likely ones, and the ones that would greatly expand Mega Man Maker and its glory. Some of these will take a year or 2, and some may take many more, but what matters most is the amount of dedication the developers have to make this a reality. What are your thoughts on Maker's future? Leave a comment down below, and if you enjoyed this video, give a like and subscribe to see more in the near future. Until next time, I'll see you all in the next video. Peace. The bosses have very unique patterns which can add a lot when customizing an arena. For example, Charade Man uses balls. That's going in.